Hey, it's Marco Pelosi III, and this is the Top Cosmetic Gynecologist
Sure.
Podcast.
So you wrote a book, and when we emailed each other, you sort of like framed it as it was going to be this out there book. So I was expecting some wild revelation, some crazy revelation. I didn't know what it was, but you created this anticipation in my mind. So when I read through the whole thing, I said, wow, she bared her soul, but I didn't really see it as this craziness more than just a very honest look at a life, and just sharing what you went through, and then the feedback that you got from the fact that you're in the biz and you're talking to people about the very same problems on a daily basis, and not only can you empathize with it, but you live it. So, what was it that prompted you to write in the first place?
Well, I've always been a writer of some sort, and I thought I had a book in me, but I didn't really know what it was. And I don't like to just talk to hear the sound of my own voice. I don't think it's worth saying something till you have something to say. And around 45, as happens to many women, my life just kind of started to unravel with perimenopause and my marriage falling apart, and just wondering what I was doing here and all of those big questions. And, I'd been practicing, for a long time, as you know, and been doing, cosmetic gynecology as well as traditional gynecology, and listening to stories from women for years about how they had decreased libido, not only over 40, some even younger, but it became so normal that was really the most common complaint that I was hearing in my office. Like, I don't want to have sex with my husband anymore, and sex isn't as good as it used to be. And I was ashamed to say, telling my patients that, you know what, I don't either. It's kind of normal. You just kind of put it on the calendar and just suck it up. And that's just kind of what happens. And I feel, I'd love to go back and find all those patients and apologize for that, because, it really is normal if we use normal to mean average. Because in my study, 93% of women that I studied had this same relationship with sex. But at the same time, I would occasionally meet someone who had an amazing relationship with sex, and she'd be 55 years old or postmenopausal, maybe 65, and come in and tell me about this incredible intimate relationship she had with her partner, and her sex was better than ever, and she was glowing and just enjoying life. And frankly, I was jealous, and I wanted to find out what she had so I could have it myself. So that's what led to the study that eventually led to the book. I, sought out this group of women that we ended up calling the Sexually Woke, which became the title of the book. And I wanted to find out what they had in common, to see if there was something that I could not only learn myself, but hopefully teach to other patients. And so, as you know, if you've read the book, because you've read the book, it's less of a book about science and more of a book about relationships and spirituality. So it does move a little bit outside of traditional medicine, which is why I warned you that it might not be what you were expecting, because, some patients or readers or physicians might expect that it's kind of a list of how to, do these 10 things and your life will be great. And it really isn't. It's much bigger than that. But it really was life-changing to do these interviews over an 18-month period, and talk deeply with women who'd really found what I call the secrets to having a truly vibrant, intimate life that's even better than ever after menopause or after childbearing. When sex stops being about having babies and turns into, why do we have sex when we're not fertile anymore? What's the purpose? And it's truly about connection and, finding that space where you can be, truly yourself and be free. So it turned into a book about spirituality and freedom and connection. And, and I'm a surgeon, as you know, which is outside of my normal realm of everyday what I think about. And so it really changed my life to do this. And I'm like so excited to be 53 and to have this new skill. So I can still do surgery, but I feel like I've got this new superpower now, having learned this from these women. So it's been just a really cool journey.
What was it that prompted this study? This you call it the MRS study, is that correct?
Yeah, well, so curiosity. So I'm seeing patients like as we do, and the great majority would come in and with the same story that I had at the time. You know, I was in a 18-year marriage with a really dull sex life, and my kids were taking all my time, and my work was taking all the other time, and my husband at the time was not connected with me at all. And that was pretty much the story I was hearing from everyone, except for these occasional women that would come in that I mentioned with another story. And so I just thought, I want to find out who these women are. I want to talk to them. And so I became much more focused on looking for the ones that came in who were feeling amazing. And then I wanted to talk to them, and I wanted to find out what they had in common. So in order to do that, I got together with a research team, and we developed a survey with 84 very extremely intimate questions about sex and relationships, and sent it all over the place. And as a result, narrowed down several questions that indicated that you might be in this, so what we call the sexually woke group. And then I honed in on them and interviewed them over about a year. And then subsequently tried, hundreds of sticky notes everywhere. And I ended up having to go away for 2 weeks to a silent retreat just to put it all together, figure out what they had in common. And truly what prompted it, Marco, was just, I wanted it. It's like, I want this for myself. I mean, I also want to give it to other people, but I wanted it for myself so much that it made me leave my marriage, which was a great thing. I said, I'm not settling for less. I don't have this. And this is something that I want. And I'll even say it's something that I need. Like, I need to have that type of connection and really deep love in my life. And I don't have it. And so I'm going to change my work. I'm going to change my marriage. And there's a lot of women are afraid to take those steps towards stepping into what I call our full aliveness, saying, I'm worth it, and I'm not going to settle for this anymore. I'm not recommending divorce for everyone. There's certainly other ways to do it, but to say, I'm worth it. This is what I need. And it's, going back to what you and I do largely, professionally with our surgical practices. Again, like going back to the idea that I'm worth it. It's okay to invest in myself. And, we spend our whole lives as women, as, having all these roles as mother, daughter, wife, and giving everything to everybody else. And this is this beautiful time in life when we reach our mid-40s. Often I see it sort of mid-40s around menopause, when we finally can step into our own shoes and say, this is about me, and that's okay. I'm not going to feel guilty or apologize for the fact that I am worth it, and whether that's optimizing how we feel about ourselves, even if it's through the type of surgeries that we offer, or seeking out spiritual guidance, or just saying no to relationships that are taking our energy away, and so it's been a really fun journey. And I'm so grateful. I'm actually 53. I feel better than ever. I'm happier than ever. And the book was kind of a way to get there. And I think a lot of women have really shared that they've enjoyed learning that you can be brave enough to do that, and you don't have to apologize.
Now, it seems like the people that you identify, just because of the way that you phrase everything, is that you were focused on, they're outliers. They're not really the main group of women in that age category. The main group is not having a happy and satisfying sex life. So if you had to put it into
study, like 93% were not. So the 7%, there was 7% that fell into the sexually woke group.
That's crazy.
Which I'm not surprised about, honestly. Seeing women all my life as a career, I would have said it was almost everybody, and it did turn out to be almost everybody. 93% did not fall into this group that we called the sexually woke. So about 60%, were actually flat out dissatisfied with their sex life, and the remainder were just kind of neutral. But only 7% were really energized and enlivened by it and felt that their relationship brought them energy. And it's not a big group, it's teachable. you can move into that group. And I can tell you that because I did. I went from a really flat, disconnected marriage to a relationship, to being, first of all, fine by myself, and then to being able to be present in a relationship where I could really be there, fully be present and interact, for my full self, which is really getting into sort of the spiritual world. And it is a bit of a spiritual book, but you can't separate these things. It's just the way life works. So menopause and the time around, sort of 40 to 65 and even later, I reframed in my own mind, and truly I saw this in the patients that I interviewed, as being kind of this doom and gloom time that you become irrelevant, and life to being this amazing field of optimism where you have this freedom. The kids may be getting older, you've got more time to yourself, you've got more wisdom. And so I'm loving being older. I would never go back to that other time because I didn't know this, it's beautiful. So I'm super grateful.
How did this flatness and disconnection in your personal situation evolve? Was this something that was always there, or was this something that evolved?
Well, and it happens to most people, it turns out, and I'm not unique, but my story is very much like most of my friends and most of the women I talk to. You marry someone who's super exciting and everything's wonderful at first, and then you both have these big careers, and you spend all this time on that and very little time together, and then throw a few kids in there, and after a while you've spent 10, 15 years without actually talking to each other about anything important. So as time passes, many people, including myself, found really living with a stranger like I hadn't. I share this in the book, we wasn't, we didn't argue or anything. It was just a very sort of flat relationship. He traveled a lot for work, and sometimes he'd go to another country, and I didn't even know where he was. And I didn't care either. It was like, oh, he's just not here. They were just so disconnected that I'm like, when are you coming home? I don't really care where you are, and I'm not going to talk to you while you're gone. And that sounds horrible, but truthfully, this is normal. If we call normal more common than not, this is the way most marriages in the Western world are. And I can say that with certainty because I've interviewed, many, many women who felt the same way. And I think it's part of our culture that because we're so focused on work and children and become a lot less focused often on ourselves and don't give time to the relationship. And if you don't water a plant, it's going to wither and die. And so that's how relationships die. And, since the divorce rate's close to 50%, and out of the other 50%, most of them are unhappy, it clearly is a big problem. And luckily, it's not something that needs to be fixed more than just addressed. Or sometimes it's time to move on, and that's okay too. Relationships don't have to last forever. But having a really vibrant sex life is such an amazing part of being a human. And there's no time in our lives that we need to let go of that. Just because we're 50 or 60, our sexual being is a really important part of our whole authentic self. And anytime we cut off part of ourselves, we're not living in our full aliveness, whatever it is we're denying, if it's our creative side or our sexual side or whatever it is. So this is really just about learning to just be your full self. And I tell women, just be big. Like if someone's telling you you're being too opinionated, too much, too loud, that's a sign you might need to walk away. because you need to be able to be yourself, so don't let anyone squash your energy. Because one of the first types of ways we express as women when our energy is squashed is we stop wanting to have sex. So if you're in a relationship, guys, and your partner's not wanting to have sex, maybe she doesn't feel like she's free to be herself, and that's so important. And I mean, what a joy it gives back to life. I mean, tell you, like, life just becomes so much more fun. It's just fun. And sex for a lot of couples, especially if they've been together for a while, is really an elephant in the room that becomes such a source of pressure and resentment. And it can change to be just this source of playfulness and joy and fun. And so that's what I'm hoping that everyone can experience.
Now, do you
because
think
it's really fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
Do you think that the relationships that you encountered in your interactions with the people and with the survey responses, were the happy ones people that all moved on to a new partner, or were these some of these people somebody who had they had this relationship for years and years from the beginning that never went sour?
So I didn't meet anybody who had not struggled. I'll just tell you that. But the majority of the women in this so-called sexually woke group were in a long-term relationship. They'd been married 30, 40 years. Now, some had been divorced and got into a new relationship, but the majority were married to their lifetime partner. I mean, several had been together since they were 18 years old, but none of them had gone through it unscathed. I mean, there wasn't a single woman I talked to who said that it had been just like bliss and joy since the beginning. They'd all been through some kind of crisis, a health crisis or a disconnection requiring some therapy or something. So, it's this cliche that we grow through suffering, but I mean, it really came out in this study that every single one of these women had gone through some really challenging times with their partner, but most of them were with their primary partner, and many of them for 30 or 40 years. Which, so I'm not at all suggesting that divorce is the only option, but it is an option. For sometimes things are too broken to be fixed, but oftentimes we just need to stop what we're doing and turn around, look at the person we're with and just say, hey, hold hands and look each other in the eyes and talk, learn to speak and listen mindfully again, like we used to, just stop running around and doing other stuff. Because, people require attention, just like pets and plants. But we give more attention to our pets and plants often than to our spouse, because we kind of think they're going to always be around. But you know what? They won't be. If we treat them that way, they will be really unhappy and or leave. So it's a really good idea if you want to have your partner stick around and be happy to give them your attention and be very intentional about it. And that was actually one of the so-called secrets that the sexually woke shared. They really put intention into nurturing the relationship, even if it was only a few minutes a day, just to be, how are you doing? What's going on? Or leave little sticky notes on the mirror, or do those little special things, get a little pinch on the butt or a little cute little sexy thing. It doesn't cost any money. It's just fun, but you have to do it. And if you don't do it, the plants die, so I've really learned to just pay attention to how much the humans around me need, and it doesn't cost me anything. In fact, it feeds me with energy too, to do that for my kids, for my spouse, and everybody here I care about.
Do you think it's harder now in the digital age? I mean, we go to dinner with our cell phones and we spend half of the meal on the phone. We're right across from a human being, but we're not there. Do you think that's a problem that's contributing to this somehow?
Oh yeah, I mean that's one habit that I would say you just want to commit to give up, because that's a relationship killer at the top of the list. So the whole thing really came down to presence. Wherever it is, like being fully present with the person. It doesn't have to be for very long, but if it's in the bedroom and you're thinking about something else, or, got your mind on your work, or she's thinking about the groceries or trying to watch TV over your shoulder. You're not present. I mean, being present is just letting go of everything else and being with this person for however long that it is. And if you're out at dinner, please turn your phone off. And sometimes that could be one of the intentions that you might set as a couple, to say, I know we're both phone addicts, and I am, but I'm going to commit to, when we go out to dinner, I'm going to turn my phone off and I'm going to talk to you. And I'm going to listen to you because I personally, if somebody's on their phone when I'm talking to them, they will not be in my life much longer as a personal friend. It's very hard to be on the other end of that. And I think we've all experienced that. So yeah, for sure. And when I go to restaurants and I see couples doing that, I'm just sad for them, because I imagine that translates into the bedroom too.
Yeah. So, Sexually Woke. How did you come up with the title? I think it's a great phrase. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so I did not come up with it myself. One of the women I was interviewing told me that she and her girlfriend, who were being interviewed, described themselves as being sexually woke. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Thank you I'm going to change the title of this group we're talking to from the positive responders, which is what my research team called them. I'm like, that is not a sexy term. So we started calling the group the Sexually Woke. And I got quite a bit of pushback actually from my publisher. They thought it was too out there, but it worked. And so I like it. It just works because the words about waking up, awakening, seeing something new, like all of these words kind of skating around the same idea of like seeing something that was already there, or becoming aware of something that you had been kind of blind to before, like all these different ways that people put it, but all the metaphors were very similar, like coming out of my shell, or they were so similar, even though the women came from totally different cultures, different races. That idea was always underlying about waking up. And I experienced it like, oh my gosh, like really, like this is possible? I had no idea. So for me, it really felt like waking up from a trance kind of state that I'd been in for my whole life, like just going along and doing what I was supposed to do without the joy and the excitement, So I'm super grateful to the women who gave me that title. And then I got to trademark it, which was even better because now we can make t-shirts and whatever else. But yeah, it just seemed to work.
That's great. Now, one of the hardest things in book publishing is, as a new author, to get a publisher to publish your book. How did you get that to happen?
Yeah, it is hard. And so I know nothing about this. I'm a doctor, I'm such a babe in the woods when it comes to knowing about book publishing. I have no clue. So I'm sort of at the mercy. It could have been taken advantage of by so many people. But ironically, one of the leaders of my research team is married to a publishing agent. So that was just one of those lucky, fortuitous things. And so I was hooked up with a publishing agent who was connected with me through the research project. And so he was able to guide me through the process, actually. And without that, I would never have been able to get a publisher. I would have been self-published, and which would have been fine, but that makes it a whole lot more difficult to market and things like that. But just luck. Right. And I kind of think luck sometimes happens because things are supposed to be that way. But yeah, how do you get a publishing agent? I have no idea. I could go through look it on Google, I guess, but one fell in my lap. So I was very lucky. Yeah.
Now, I Googled you this past week. I wanted to get a little background information on everything. And I saw that you were born in New Zealand.
I was. And if I talk to you long enough, occasionally I'll say something that sounds a little funny. But I've been here since 1986. So I came here at age 18 and now I'm 53. So I've lived here a lot longer than New Zealand. But yeah, that's I left there to take a gap year, which is very common in countries like New Zealand. You know, you live on this little island and you want to go see the world. And so I was going to go to medical school right after high school, which is the way it works there, and got a year of deferment and was going to travel the whole world and go back. And my world trip, which was supposed to be around the whole world, took me from Los Angeles to Houston. And that, because I was having such a good time. I was 18 in this new country. So I got from Los Angeles to Houston, and then the year was up, and I had to either go back or become a student. That was the only two choices. So I went to school in Houston, and I still live here. So just an accident, but turned out pretty well because Houston has the biggest medical center in the country, and just, you know, all kinds of lucky accidents. So
now I heard,
but it's a great place to visit. Yeah.
I heard that you
go
got
visit.
your college degree after you got your medical degree. Is that true?
That is true.
How does that happen?
Again, oh, I was clueless. You know, having not grown up in this country, I had no clue about anything to do with how you go to college. I mean, I literally said, all right, I'm in Houston. I need a student visa really fast. Where's a university? So go down to University of Houston, and they got me the appropriate visa. The point was just not to get deported. And then I stayed long enough to get a degree. And then I went to Baylor College of Medicine here in Houston. I never went to the commencement ceremony for my bachelor's degree because I was in Europe, and I didn't care. And then I finished my medical degree, and when they were going to give me my MD, they were doing some double checking and said, you know, we actually don't have any record that you graduated from University of Houston. And I said, well, I'm sure I did. So I go down there. It turns out there's some piece of paper that I didn't sign at the end of the semester. So they never did give me my degree. But once I signed it, they granted it to me after my MD. So that's a funny thing on my wall, that I actually did not get an undergraduate degree till after my MD. You know, I was in Europe having fun. Didn't ever march and get my cap and gown.
What got you into gynecology of all things?
So I think I wanted to be, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but not a gynecologist for sure. My father was he's deceased, but was a everything doctor, you know, an old-fashioned family doctor. He delivered babies. He delivered over 3,000 babies in his career as a family practitioner, did minor surgeries. He did everything, had the doctor bag, house calls. So I sort of thought that's what doctors did when I went to med school. And then I realized that that wasn't really what doctors did anymore. So I went through the clinical rotations as you do and just kind of ruled them out. I'm like, general surgery, no, like psychiatry, no. I'm like, oh, this is not looking good because I'm running out of choices. But when I did my OB-GYN rotation, I just was like, oh, this is it. I want to do this. This is where I belong. I love the people. I love the patients. I went in even when I wasn't supposed to be on call. I just wanted to be there all the time. You know, it just lit me up. I was so energized by it. So it was just a no-brainer. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Thank goodness, because I was sort of about to take the LSAT and go to law school because I was kind of running out of options. I'm like, maybe this medicine thing isn't for me, because I kind of didn't like any of the other things at all. But I actually, when I was in high school, I was going to be either a dress designer or a doctor. Those were the two choices, because I sewed my own clothes since I was about 12, and actually had a shop in New Zealand where I sold clothes and made by me. So I've always been really good at sewing, and you know, small sewing. I did knitting and crochet and all kinds of crafts my mom taught me. And so I always wanted to do something where I was physically working on someone. Like surgery just super appealed to me. And the more artistic types of surgery, especially like creating something with, you know, cosmetic surgery or changing something to look different than it did before. So general surgery didn't really give me that high. Like taking out a gallbladder was like, kind of looks the same. But getting into cosmetic surgery just really, I mean, I truly just felt like it was just a different type of fabric. And I remember working with leather and silk and all kinds of fabrics, stretch fabrics, making swimsuits and things like that. So in things like labiaplasty, for example, I use a lot of the thought process that I used to use making leotards or swimsuits. It's really stretchy. You've got to use the same care that you would use using any type of stretch fabric. And so learning how to sew as a younger person really translated into being, pretty good, and knowing the pitfalls and ins and outs that apply to doing gynecologic cosmetic surgery, because it's really just fabric, just a different kind. We're cutting and sewing, and so I love sewing, and so that's given me a way to incorporate that into my career without making clothes, which got kind of boring. But yeah, operating on people is just such an honor and an amazing experience, and it never gets old. I love it.
Now, you started the largest women's healthcare group in gynecology in the country. Is that true?
That's what I'm told. So, I retired from that in July, but according to all of the people who researched it, there was no larger OB-GYN all-female group in the country at that time. We had 28 providers, 140 employees, all women. And so that was super fun. I started that by myself with a cardboard box. It was just me and a medical assistant and a box of pens. And that was in 2002. And then this year I decided to, I'd kind of done that, been there, done that. It was amazing, but wanted to move on to something else. So it was a super fun project, but they're doing very well on their own now. I taught them how to fly on their own and moved on to do my own thing with this new midlife wellness center, because I got so excited about menopause and midlife sexuality that I thought that was I just have to focus on that, because there's so much work to do in that field that I just really don't want to do anything else, just that. And so that's all I do now, which is amazing.
Now, you've been a life coach for doctors who were burned out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got excited about coaching too, because I was, in this larger group, that was a lot of work that I was doing, not professionally, but just sort of as a friend, coaching younger physicians in how to create work-life balance and things like that. So I actually got certified as a coach through Rice University, and I love coaching female physicians, especially surgeons, because they're a particularly unhealthy group, just is a fact. But life coaching for any women, but I can resonate obviously with what female healthcare providers go through, and the challenges of balancing family and relationship and work. So I do that too. And, that all happens at my office. So you can, the nice thing about not taking insurance, as is you just see people for whatever they want to be seen for, and it doesn't have to have a code. So you can come in and talk to me about whatever you want to. And which is so freeing, not to have those time constraints that are imposed upon us by insurance companies, and just be able to, I can sit and talk to you, mindfully for an hour and not worry about being late or be watching my clock. It's so nice for a patient and for me, the stress levels just gone from, 90 to 0. So we start on time, we end on time, give full attention to the one person who's there. And whether it's about labiaplasty, vaginoplasty, hormone pellets, or just what am I going to do with my life, or sexual, improving sexual function, or whatever it is, I just see one patient at a time. Of course, we can only see one patient at a time, but there's not 3 people waiting. I literally see one patient at a time. There's no one in the waiting room. And it's such a nice way to do things. I'm really enjoying this phase.
Right.
I have 2 employees now instead of 140, which is just lovely.
Yeah, going from that to this must be just such an indulgence in just taking your time and doing the things you never had time to do when you had a busy practice and had to limit people to 10 minutes or 15 minutes max.
Yeah, it's not a good way to practice anything. Everybody's stressed. Patient doesn't get what they need. The doctor doesn't feel satisfied. Everybody's stressed. So, it is a luxury. I'm really grateful to be in this position. I'm 53, you and I have been doing this for a long time. So we're very established, and you can't do this when you're just out of residency. But it's really great. So, I mean, I could do this forever as long as my faculties are intact. Like, I don't want to retire. It's like, why would you want to stop doing this? This is fun. I can't wait to go to work. It's just really nice. And I tell you, I didn't feel like that a couple years ago. So it's good.
Well, that was work, work for work's sake. Now this seems more like a passion, which is just looking forward to getting to work and indulging yourself.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people say that. I hear, that's sort of a cultural thing from maybe our parents' age group culture, like a job. That's why they call it, I've heard people say stuff like, well, that's why they call it a job, because that's why they pay you. You're not supposed to like it. And I'm like, well, what about if you had work that you loved? And so I actually do this in my coaching work, like about finding your zone of genius. Like, isn't it possible to actually work in your zone of genius so you're doing stuff you love and making money? And the truth is, it is possible. And I'm doing it, and I'm guessing you're doing it, and a lot of people I know are doing it. And it's something that's probably reserved for people over 40, 45, because at first you do have to put in your time, but then it's just, the whole idea of retiring at 65 and doing nothing. I mean, that sounds horrible to me. I want to keep having purpose and providing service and learning from the patients I'm seeing as long as I can, drive to the office. And after that, I'll get someone to drive me.
I look at retirement as a disability, like a self-imposed.
Yeah.
It's not in my DNA. Now,
No.
where and when, how did you become so spiritual? And it's not religion, it's just spiritual mindfulness. I mean, really looking inward, looking at the present, looking at and just being aware of things. In your book, you reference a whole host of Eastern philosophers and just a whole lot of people that are in that space. So how did you develop that?
Yeah, it's funny because a teacher of mine says, like, it's usually through desperation. And he's sort of joking, like nobody starts like meditating if they're having a great time. It's like it comes out of struggle. And so I just sort of was living the life, as they say, you got to the top of the mountain and didn't like the view. I worked all my life to get to the highest point of my career and was like, all right, well, what now? And so I was really just drawn to know there was something more. And I don't really subscribe to any particular religion, but I do love a lot of the wisdom of Eastern philosophers. And I mean, all religions have amazing wisdom, but it ties in so much with medicine because, we can't separate our spiritual health from our physical health. There's so much data now that's like pure science coming from Harvard and Stanford about the benefits of sitting still and meditating, or whatever you want to call it, contemplative prayer, and whatever your favorite flavor is, but in lowering blood pressure and so many measurable indices, and even longevity. And so as doctors, if we don't start paying attention to that, we're really missing out on a lot. And then, bringing it into our practice, even just things like mindful listening, if you're seeing a doctor and they're not paying attention and they're looking at their watch, I mean, it's just not a good experience. So I came to it because I kind of had to. I was like, I'm starting to hate my job. Like, I was feeling sick on Sunday night. I didn't want to go. It's like, I got to change things. And so, yeah, like my teacher Benny says, you usually come to it out of desperation one way or another. But I love reading all the science that's come from people like Dan Siegel and all these incredible neuroscientists about the benefits of these type of what we call, spiritual practices on our physical health. And it's just really undeniable. It's not foo-foo tree hugging nonsense. It's pure straight up science. And I think, traditional medicine is slowly starting to accept that. But in as much as we don't accept that, we're really missing out on a huge possibility to help ourselves and our patients to be more well, because I don't want to treat sick people really. I want to help people to be more well. I'm not an internal medicine doctor. I didn't go into cardiology. I love seeing women and help them to be more well. And however that is through surgery or talking or bioidentical hormones or all of these different things we have to offer, you know, platelet-rich plasma and all these incredible scientific developments that help us to feel more well. And some of that is just sitting still and being introspective. So I don't think we can deny anymore that that medicine and spirituality go together. I mean, you'd have a hard time denying it if you know, tons of science supporting it.
Now, this is a perfect segue. You ran the Ironman, not once, but multiple times, and not the half Ironman or the baby. You ran the real deal.
Yeah,
did you not?
Much times.
And so when you're running and you're doing the swimming and you just think you can't go on, is that part of the spirituality that gets you through it?
Oh yeah. So I, you know, doing these crazy athletic events is so full Ironman. Some people don't know. I was so in awe when I heard about it. I'm like, I don't know how someone could do that. And I actually went to watch a friend of mine do it and was like, there's no way you could do that. You swim 2.4 miles and then you ride 112 miles on the bike and then you do a marathon and you do it all together with no stopping. And so it's like morning till night. It takes me about 12 hours. You start at 7 and end in the dark at 7. And you're getting nutrition along the way, but you're not really stopping at all except maybe to go to the bathroom. And so you really have to dig deep. And, you know, we talk about digging deep a lot, but I didn't really know what that meant. It's like really finding what is the most that you can do. And the Ironman race really taught me, you know, I probably could do more, honestly. I mean, they have longer races, but that's good enough. I'm kind of done at that. That was enough lesson for me. Like it taught me that we can do so much more than we're conditioned to believe. And just knowing that and getting that experience through the race, or you could get it a lot of other ways, doing something much more difficult than you think you could achieve. So many times we say, oh, I couldn't do that. Like, no, I can't do that. Like I'm not able to do that. And it's just it's a limiting belief. It's a story that we tell ourselves because we're all of us so much more capable and so much more able than we believe, you know. So I approach that through sports and, you know, whether it's spin class or doing a triathlon or whatever, that's been my portal into understanding that. But there's other ways to understand it, just stepping outside your box and saying, and just questioning those voices that say, I can't do that, or I could never do that. And say in the bedroom, which is my world as such, like so many times we live in this box where it's like, oh, I don't do that. That's not something I do, or I wouldn't be comfortable with that. But just questioning that, like, well, really? Like, how about just go outside of that box just for a minute, just try something different and see, maybe you can do that. You know, so it's all about freedom. You know, when you live in a box, you're not free because you live in a box and it's got walls. So I'm talking about like getting outside of the walls of the box, and the idea of freedom is just being so big, like it just becomes so expansive and the opportunities are just endless. And so the Ironman race is kind of like that, like, holy shit, I can do that. And so maybe that translates into taking a risk and saying, I can start my own business at 53, because that's not a very smart thing to do. I was making a ton of money at the old business. Why on earth would my accountant's like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I can start my own business again. I can start a new business again at 53 because I have this unconditional confidence in myself. Like, it's just trust in yourself, you know? And so you can practice it in different ways. But coming back to the world of sex, you can practice it that way too. Like, just try something new. Like, I didn't have a vibrator till I was in my 40s. I just thought that was something you didn't do because my mom told me you didn't do that. And now I have a whole bunch because you just, it's like, wow, who knew this was something, you know? And so just that freedom to get out of the old ideas and limiting beliefs. And you can approach it through sports or through sex or through trying something brave, like starting a new business or writing a book, or even sending someone a poem or telling someone what you really feel about them, or all these little things that we wish that we you know, so many times I'm like, oh, I wish I'd said something and I didn't, you know, just do it, you know? So that's sort of what I teach now. Just do it. You know, if you want to say something, someone just, you know, I have teenagers, like, if you think a girl's really pretty and you want to invite her out on a date, just, why don't you just go do it? Like, what are you afraid of, you know? And so as adults, we still have a lot of that stuff, that like not wanting to be vulnerable or be hurt. And I don't know, I just wish for all of us that we could just take that step, you know, just do it. Whether it's, you know, taking care of yourself, taking care of your sexuality, you know, through the things that we have to offer, whatever it is, take a new course, write a book, start a new business, just do whatever it is that you have always wanted to do. And someone told you you couldn't, but they were lying. And it might have been you, you know, but it's not true, you know?
Right. No, well, I think one of the important things about the book is that you're giving a voice to a problem that's a problem for many women who maybe they don't speak well, they can't verbalize it. You're verbalizing it for them, and then you're showing them as a role model to say, listen, I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to be a conservative person in what I say and not be talking about these things about my own life. And then you show them that's nonsense. This is just a human condition, and it's something that everybody goes through. And if you open your mouth, there are things out there that can move you forward to a better place.
Yeah, I love the way you said that, because like we all come with this standard stock issue human body and mind, right? I mean, there's nothing that I've thought that someone hasn't thought before. We're just not, we all have these same limitations. We all have these same limiting thoughts. We all have these same fears about sex and about our abilities. We all have these same fears of vulnerability. It's not ours. And if we can make it less personal and say, like, this isn't my problem, it's just being human. Like, you know, you and I came with the same, we didn't invent this brain, but learning how to work with it and kind of be a little lighthearted and humorous around those kind of funny things that humans do, it just makes life so much more joyful and less heavy. And whenever we're able to connect with another person and share these things, what I always find out is it's like, oh shoot, I thought I was the only one, but yeah, you too, me too. And then that, you know, really brings that feeling of not being alone, you know, because most women I found who I talked to, and I felt the same way, I really thought I was the only one. I thought, you know, something's wrong with me. Other people don't have this, but it turns out that's not the case. And that's such a great thing to know, because you feel so supported. So yeah, I think when you write a book like that, you put yourself out there, and some people will criticize it, and you just have to be prepared for that. But, you know, learning to trust yourself, you know, it's not for everyone. And if people love it, great. And if they don't, then that's okay too. But I don't think anyone's going to write a book that is going to resonate with every single person, and just be brave enough to know that it's okay. You know, like if you painted a picture, not everyone's going to like it.
Well, that's the point. It takes a stand. If it doesn't irritate people, it's not good enough. You didn't make your points strongly enough.
That's right.
Because
That's right. And speaking of which, I hope everybody registered to vote. And you can probably guess which side I'm on, but it doesn't matter. We all need to vote. So I cannot believe that's coming up next week. But I actually took the day off on November 4th to either cry or celebrate, depending how it goes. But yeah, we got to take a stand. And, you know, so when it comes to whatever it is, and so we've got this thing coming up, you know, with the election. And I do correlate it with the book. It's the same thing about just being brave. If in as much as we don't participate, you know, we really don't have a right to complain. Like, we've got to participate in our own lives too. And so a lot of people walk around complaining about their sex life or about their relationship, but how much are you participating to fix it? You know, I've done that too. I mean, I've spent a lot of time complaining, but that kind of makes me a victim in a way. Like, I don't want to be someone where the world happens to me. I want to be someone where the world happens by me, that I'm responsible, and I'm responsible for everything that's happening in my life. And so whether that's voting next week, or whether that's taking responsibility for my own sexuality or my own relationship, or being brave enough to either fix it or leave, or whatever it is, it's just about being responsible and trusting yourself. There's just so much intersection, I think, between medicine and, I guess, what you'd call spirituality, but just this kind of self-awareness,
Oh, I call it placebo, but I think placebo is part of medicine. The difference between a good doctor and a bad doctor is the placebo. It's how they approach the person, how they interact, because anybody can read vital signs, anybody can cut, clamp, and suture, but it's everything around that. It's like when you go to the restaurant and you have the expensive bottle and the sommelier just gives you everything very nice and presents it. It sets this mental stage for everything else that's going to happen, rather than just going through the motions and saying, here, your thing is done, have a nice day.
Yeah, well, in that setting, you're right. I mean, it could be a really crappy wine, but he says it's really good, so I'm going to agree, right? Because he's put a bunch of bows on it. But I might not call it placebo with a doctor-patient relationship. It's really connection, because you're right. Any monkey can do the things that need to be done to do, say, a annual wall woman exam, right? A vital signs, a pap smear, breast exam. I mean, you could do that with no connection whatsoever, and it would be a very dull event. Or you could do it with connection, where you're engaging and talking to the patient about what matters to her, and she's still getting the same boring things done, but she leaves feeling like she had a really good experience. And so I don't think it's placebo, Mark. I think when you do that with your patients, you're really connecting with them. You're giving them some value. It's not real. It's real. Like, that's really valuable. And who cares about a pap smear? You're never going to get cervix cancer. You've been HPV negative forever. But what you're getting is connection with a human being who cared about you and asked you questions and made you feel important. And that's why people go to the doctor,
No, I don't refer to placebo as the placebo, like the sugar pill in a drug study. To me, placebo is the bedside manner. It's a different definition of it. We're talking the same thing, just giving it different language.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's the secret sauce. It's the secret sauce.
Now, I know this book just came out like days ago, right? It came out, last week?
Yeah.
God,
2 weeks ago. Yeah, like 15th or so.
Well, congratulations on it. Have you gotten any feedback? I'm sure you gave some advanced copies to people that you know.
Yeah, it's been, of course, the advanced copies you give to people that will like it, right? That's how that works. But the feedback's been generally positive. I try not to look on Amazon, and people are leaving reviews, and they're overwhelmingly positive. And then I got a 1-star review, but that's what happened. Somebody thought it was terrible and hated it. But I mean, if I didn't have that, like you said, I mean, I'm not pushing the envelope enough. I mean, something that I said really rubbed someone the wrong way, and that's okay. But for the most part, just lots of really great feedback from women who are so happy to have their thoughts. They feel like their own thoughts are put on paper. Like, oh, I have that too. A lot of that kind of feedback. Like, I felt like that too, and I thought I was the only one. Or thanks for sharing that, because I've never wanted to talk to anyone about that. About how I, whatever it is, about physical things, like about my vagina being loose, or about not feeling comfortable in my body, and all of these things that are talked about. And we don't have a place for that kind of discussion very frequently, unless you're going to see someone like yourself or me. Most women don't have that opportunity, and they just keep it inside and feel like something's wrong with them. So there's this really prevalent feeling of not being enough or having something wrong. And it was just a place to kind of realize, what, that's just not true. And we all feel like that. So yeah, that's been nice to share.
Yeah, unfortunately for many women, the gynecologist's office visit, the annual visit, just doesn't have the time luxury to get into this stuff the way really it's set up. And I don't think people are actually trained in this because of that. They're producing people to do well visits and do procedures, and to shift gears and say, wait, we have to do this this sexual counseling. They'll look at the clock and they'll say, okay, how many of these can we do in a day, and what is going to be the insurance copay? And then they'll say it just doesn't work out that way. And there's no other place. The psychiatrists and the psychologists and the counselors aren't really there for the general population. They're there for people with problems already. They're not like coaching or in any capacity.
Yeah, that's really true. Doctors, and I mentioned this in the book for women to know, it just in case they didn't already, doctors, even gynecologists, don't know much at all about sex. They just don't. I mean, they know what from their own experience, but we're not taught about this in school. We certainly don't know how to counsel people about sexual dysfunction or sexual wellness or optimization. You know, you got your hand on the door trying to get out the door, and then the patient will say, oh, by the way, you know, I haven't had any sex drive for 10 years. And I remember this feeling like, oh no, I just got to get out of this room. And so, you know, I try to politely say, well, you know, this is really a bigger conversation that we'll need to have at another time, you know, but I'm realizing like, I don't have a fucking clue what to even tell you about that. And so we tend to just say, you know, here's a sex therapist to go see or whatever. I mean, there's just such a paucity of knowledge around this topic. And so I hope that we can improve that over time, because it's just been pushed out of, it's not taught in med school, and it's barely taught in psychology or psychiatry school. It's like, you know, well, just take an antidepressant, and which of course makes things 10 times worse. So, I mean, now we're developing these things that can actually help with women's sexuality that you and I do a lot of, you know, with PRP and vaginal rejuvenation and things that actually work, that are scientifically proven. And so it's growing, and it needs to keep growing, because it's a huge part of our lives that women are just losing, and they're not getting any help when they go to the gynecologist, because 10 minutes, I can't even get into talking about sexuality in 10 minutes. It takes an hour, maybe 3 hours, maybe 3 1-hour visits to even get started. I mean, it's a big, deep topic. So yeah, you got to just understand your gynecologist is a human being, and they don't know much about this either. And chances are they're probably struggling with the same thing you are.
Sure.
You know?
Right. So your current practice now is coaching in this capacity, cosmetic, genital surgery, hormonal therapy. What else is in your array of services?
Yeah, well, so it's just me. There's only so much I can do, right? I'd love to do all of these things, but the things you mentioned, I love. I mean, I've been doing cosmetic gynecology for about 15 years, and it's just, I love it. And like I mentioned, it's like really allowed me to play with my sewing skills and my design skills that I love. So that's my favorite thing. And then just being a menopausal woman myself, really understanding bioidentical hormone replacement, and that's been fantastic. And so I love hormone pellets. I've got one right now in my bottom, PRP stuff with a O shot or whatever you call it in your neck of the woods. And then we've got, you know, all the non-surgical vaginal rejuvenation things as well. But that's really, I've had to sort of stay in my lane. I've got, you know, there's all these fantastic things that you want to do, and you can only do so many things. So I'm like, that's it. I'm going to just do that and try to drown out the noise and not do other things. But that's plenty, and that's the stuff I love to do right now. So, yeah.
So where can people find you online? What's your home base?
So the easiest way is drsusan.com, which is drsusan.com. And that's my whole practice, including the medical practice, and then my blog and podcast and book and everything. The practice is called CompleteMidlifeWellnessCenter.com, which is another website, which they're linked together, but probably easier to type in drsusan.com, and then you get the whole thing. And I love to email people. I'm actually one of those doctors who actually emails people back and likes to communicate, and so it's pretty easy to find me. And the book's actually works on Amazon, and I super love feedback about that. So easy to find, and I'm in Houston, but we do telemedicine, so I see patients from all over the world remotely, and then if they choose to come in and see me in person, we've got amazing 5-star hotels right next door, so win-win.
That's phenomenal. Well, Susan, I think I'm going to let you go because we could stay on here talking about this stuff for another week. And I'm
I
sure
really
you,
could. It's
you, have,
fun.
you have patients tomorrow that will be waiting for you. So
Well, it's so good to see you again.
it's great to see you. And I hope we can see you in March in Fort Lauderdale at the World Congress of the ISCG.
Well, fingers crossed that will take place. Yes. And if not, we'll do it by Zoom or something because that's an important thing to do. Yeah.
Yes, we will. So once again, I'm here with the author of Sexually Woke, the first book on sexuality in midlife that can be amazing, Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith from Houston, Texas. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you. And let's catch up soon.
You too. Share this podcast and this website and this blog with the people in your life who you feel would benefit from this information.